I presume you're here in order to learn of Magecraft. I'll have you know, there's no room for the weak-willed in this course, and despite your best efforts, the sorcery of our time is but a fraction of what it once was in the Age of Gods. Much of the craft is established through pedigree, and the culture of mages is riddled with deception and moral depravity. That said, if you insist, I shall do my best to educate you in this miserable, yet fascinating world.
In our previous lesson, I spoke of witches, witchcraft, and the difference between them. Back then, I mentioned a rather unique witch, Alice Kuonji, but hardly had the time to truly delve into her life and abilities. Her Ploy Kickshaw alone happens to be enough for us to dedicate an entire lesson to. As I mentioned before, Alice is the current generation's witch of her family. Her mother, Minster, fell in love with the eldest son of the Kuonjis. Despite their romance, Minster feared bearing the Kuonji heir a child, knowing full well it would be a witchly daughter like herself, fated to inherit all the blood and stigmas witches are burdened with. Even worse, she feared a prophetic notion that falling in love will only bring tragedy. Regardless, the two married and had Alice, naming her after Alice in Wonderland. Just as expected, misfortune struck the family. Minster died shortly after Alice's birth. Alice's father cared for her dearly for several years, enduring harsh criticism from his peers before also dying. This left Alice all alone in the lavish yet eerie mansion her parents had bought in Japan. Choosing to follow her mother's legacy, Alice dutifully follows the path of a witch, though she didn't have much choice to begin with. After all, she was a witch, one who after a certain age would stop growing, an eternal flower, delicate and dangerous. Alice has a pale complexion and cold demeanor. The school she attends, the prestigious Rayan Girls' Academy, has her wearing a uniform akin to a nun's habit. She lives in the Kuonji mansion with Aoko Aozaki, having been roommates for 2 years. Despite her reserved nature, Alice can show moments of warmth and vulnerability around Aoko. Witches being of a different ilk than humanity says nothing of humans and witches being able to get along after all. The two are friends, but ultimately their relationship is one of instructor and apprentice. Alice teaches Magecraft to Aoko. Put bluntly, it's an exercise in patience. This arrangement came as the result of the Kuonji's connection to the Aozaki family. There's a tinge of irony to this relationship, however. While the two would get along as roommates, they were bound to conflict with one another under the right conditions. In a single moment, all of their friendly banter can dissipate in the face of a fundamental disagreement over human values. These details may seem extraneous, but given Alice is one of the few surviving witches for us to learn from, I feel it is best to understand not just her abilities, but also her current state of living. That said, let's move on to the heart of this lesson, Alice's remarkable witchcraft. Her left eye is a mystic Eye of Enchantment she can use to bind her targets. Her system of magecraft is called Yumina, based on the founder of the Department of Botany. This implies that Alice is actually a descendant of Yumina. Practically speaking, this means Alice specializes in putting up barriers, invoking curses, and even levitation. While she's considered extremely talented, it's worth noting that she isn't suited for direct confrontation. While mages often train their bodies for close combat or fire off magic bullets, Alice does neither. Instead, her witchcraft relies almost exclusively on familiars. To conjure these familiars, Alice uses a system called Ploy Kickshaw that summons familiars based on fantasy and fairy tales. They are called ploys, created by giving form to classic and iconic stories and nursery rhymes. In total, Alice has about 30 ploys, 20 of which she inherited from her ancestors, and 10 she made herself. They have various uses, and some definitely stand out more than others. Among them are ploys called the Great Three, powerful familiars made by the very first generation of witches. Relying on familiars may seem like a weakness, but there are tremendous benefits that come with it. While modern weaponry can certainly suppress modern mages, Alice's ploys don't function on the same level of reasoning, and as such are immune to guns and explosives. You need to fight mystery with mystery, sometimes even targeting a ploy's only weakness ingrained upon the story they derive from. Overall, they are splendid for combat, but that's not to say all of her ploys take an offensive role. One of Alice's more humble ploys is the Song of the Sixpences, Jack in the Box, Singing Chocolates. It is a box containing 24 bird familiars stored in the shape of chocolates. These birds monitor Alice's home, Misaki Town, on her behalf, but are fundamentally weak familiars that can be slain easily, some of which actually can run into phone poles and die. Shutting the box containing them turns the birds immediately back into chocolates, which can be melted into wounds as first aid because they contain magical energy. Even though they can be replenished, it seems Aoko eats them to casually boost herself when practicing Magecraft. Essentially, the number she eats represents the number of failed attempts she's made at a given spell. A separate bird ploy of Alice's is Robin, or Lost Robin Rondo. Based on the Cock Robin nursery rhyme, this familiar is a humble scout with no ability for combat. It is unassuming, which helps it observe without causing concern. It is debatably the weakest of her ploys, but she keeps it around for companionship. Oftentimes, it can be quite bothersome, speaking out of line and having a rather forward temperament. To further monitor the town, Alice uses the second ticket, Mirror of Napping. It was made from the combined efforts of Alice's mother and Toko Aozaki, refurbishing an enchanted mirror. Based on Alice Through the Looking Glass, it contains a separate world, but can be used to reflect parts of the city and mansion like a surveillance camera. It also excels at creating bounded fields. By reflecting the town as a chessboard, Alice can place another ploy named Nameless Forest at various locations. It deters intruders through suggestion, forcing them to think they have no business in that area. The mirror's power emanates fog, which can build up on the mansion's windows. Much worse, though, the mirror can sometimes uncontrollably create portals to its inner world throughout the mansion. It is unpredictable, but undeniably useful. For combat, Alice can rely on Tweedledee and Tweedledum, a pair of Victorian piglets with twisted personalities. They excel at speeding through forests and deterring foes by transforming themselves into scissored jaws. The Tweedles' bites are like staples, trapping victims with a conceptual curse and leaving them vulnerable to further attack. Arguably, one of Alice's most important ploys is Diddle Diddle, Banquet of the Night. Through a feat nearly on par with true magic, Alice can draw out and drop Diddle Diddle into the earth. As it sinks in like falling into water, it deepens the night, allowing Alice to use more powerful ploys. In that regard, it is an amplifier for her other ploys, but even on its own it can be used to attack foes with summoned dining utensils. It is quite versatile. For a more serious offense, however, Alice utilizes one of her great 3 ploys, Thames Troll, Giant of the Bridge. It is a golem that forms its body from the environment. As its name implies, the golem requires a nearby river to be summoned, but so long as that condition is met, the troll is incredibly deadly. It has 4 stages, each stronger than the last depending on what its body is made from. This progresses from wood to stone, metal, and gold or silver. Alice, being out of touch with modern civilization, is unable to manifest the latter 2 stages. Given no other witch exists who can, the troll's true power remains capped. Even so, if you hear Alice chanting London Bridges, your fate is likely already sealed. Another of her great 3 is Flat Snark, Oil of the Moon. Contained within a deceptive green vial is a nightmarish being called a Crown Phantasm. Created from the fat of a nomadic god, this being can be unleashed to create a rather chaotic bounded field. Within, objects from reality are transformed into living creatures from fantasy. When Alice uses Flat Snark within an abandoned amusement park, for instance, it transforms the rundown facility into a hellish carnival of living mascots, bread people, dragon roller coasters, and carnivorous clowns. Once summoned, the Snark's main form begins to grow and manifest from the fog of mana emanating throughout the barrier. When it emerges, it can attack with icebergs and spears of moonlight. Given the Great Three were developed over 1,000 years ago, it is believed that Flat Snark may be a product of the first magic, though further details are vague at best. The legend of the Snark centers around trying in futility to hunt what is unreachable and unknown. As such, it is possible to defeat Flat Snark if its true form can be found and destroyed. Sure enough, that's exactly what Aoko did when trapped within its boundary. As if Flat Snark weren't dangerous enough, Alice has another ploy called Scratch Dumpty, a magical time bomb in the shape of an egg. By setting both a target and time limit, Alice can curse one of her enemies with the threat of an unavoidable curse. Once a target is chosen, Scratch Dumpty will hover over them and await detonation. If the time limit runs out, it will explode, but perhaps even more dangerous is that it will fall and detonate should its target fail to maintain eye contact. The final of Alice's Great Three ploys is Wander Snatch, Rose Hound. It refers to a pack of ferocious monsters hidden within dense fog. They emerge with their sharp fangs before ravaging an area and devouring their prey. After the fog lifts, only bloodstains and scarred scenery remain. It is obviously one of her strongest ploys, but it seems these hounds come with the cost of a solid feeding from time to time. Thus, unleashing them isn't a matter of if, but when. To wrap this exposé off, let's visit something lighter. Sweetheart's Wishing Egg is actually a pudding in the shape of an egg. It has the ability to take the duplicate form of whomever eats it. The eater becomes trapped inside the egg, and Sweethearts takes a human form in the appearance of its victim. Not even Sweethearts itself realizes it's an imposter at that point. Needless to say, such a ploy is bound to cause chaos and mischief. Of course, Alice Kuonji has more ploys than what we've been able to cover here today. In truth, we have yet to witness any more of them, which finally brings an end to our coverage on witchcraft. In summation, Alice is regarded as the last witch, the current witch of the Meinster line. She appears human like any one of us, but has traits that clearly set her apart. She's a talented mage, able to train Aoko quite well in the span of 2 years. That said, when it comes to combat, she mainly relies on her Ploy Kickshaw, an ensemble of fantastical familiars that pretty much only she and her lineage can ever hope to utilize. For our next lesson, I will speak of another kind of magecraft that is usually out of our reach, unless you interact with another world, that is. I'm referring, of course, to Ainsworth Magecraft and their ability to harness heroic spirits in the form of class cards. Before we go ahead and roll the credits, I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 supporters. Video Gamer 75, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Freebrick, RNG or Shuffles 1498, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Johnny Tsunami, Bricken, Happy, Sakura-chan, Caitlin P, Vladimir Rovna, and SF Giants fan Mike. Thank you all so much. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of our anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content.
You can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or our YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like exclusive vids and early access.
As always,
Celebrate your fandom.